Hi, I'm Drew D'Amelia.
And I'm Nick Padula.
And this is, welcome to Blinkity Bloop, a podcast where we talk about movies that have come out recently. Blinkity Bloop is two things. It's a band, and it's this podcast.
Yeah, they're two very different things, but, it's important to keep them separate, because the band is it's our number one passion, and the podcast is another thing we happen to do.
Yeah.
Yep.
Sorry if we sound a little shaken up with this intro, because I think that it's an important disclaimer, what we usually say in the beginning, but something kind of crazy happened to us, the Blinkity Bloop boys over here.
I don't want to say my life flashed before my eyes, but at least half of it did.
I'm still kind of in shock. I don't know. Because before we were supposed to record today, the idea was I've been, I'm always looking for ways to innovate Blinkity Bloop.
Yeah.
The band, not the podcast.
Right.
And I thought, well, one thing that we haven't tried before is kind of just singing on the street and seeing how that works.
Yeah, street performing.
That's what they call it, yeah. And so, we got the band together.
Yeah. And
we were trying it. And it was just, I don't know why I'm so shaken up about it, but I guess we were kind of like assaulted by a cop.
More or less. I mean, I respect our boys in blue more than most people, but this particular officer, something was very strange about them.
It was really scary for both of us.
Yeah.
And we don't like to admit it. We like to be strong, because Blinkity Bloop is about being strong, but the cop was just really aggressive and unfair, because basically, I didn't know we needed a permit.
It's a common thing that most musicians know, but we're not most musicians.
We haven't needed a permit when we have gigs.
Yeah, we just go into buildings. I mean, and people give us permission. That's it. Like, what's the problem?
Is it different on the streets?
The streets for everyone. The streets free range. Anyone can have at it. What's the problem? If homeless people can be homeless, why can't we be performers?
Musical.
Exactly. It doesn't add up.
No one wants a cop approaching them, and that was scary enough.
Yeah.
And then just, I keep hearing what the cop said, like over and over in my head, just, "Excuse me, guys, I'm sorry to say this, but you need permits."
God.
There's something so just mean,
menacing,
and hateful about that.
It sends shivers down your spine.
Just, it really shakes me to my core. I don't know. You need permits.
Like, damn it.
And then, we're scared out of our minds, and we say, "Oh, we're so sorry. Okay." He's like, "No, it's okay. You just, next time make sure to get permits."
God damn.
And it was like, there was something so sinister about the way he said it. It was so... he had this gentle smile, but it felt like...
there was something dark underneath.
Yeah.
And the reassurance felt almost mocking.
And telling us to have a nice day was just,
salt in the wound.
He knew we were terrified.
He took advantage.
It's a horrifying experience. No one wants to be put through that, and we don't deserve it, the Blinkity Bloop boys. Not at all.
We're law-abiding citizens from birth, more or less.
I think we should fight this, but right now I'm just trying to adjust to... Yeah, it was a harrowing experience. But for now, we're going to talk about more November movies. It actually looks like this is going to be a three-parter, which is shocking to me. I didn't think that we would get into 3 parts for November movies, but...
Yeah, back when we just did movies by the month, we usually only had, 3 movies per month, so...
Well, technically it was 6 movies per month, because we would do it twice a month.
Okay.
And then I think we officially did movies of the month with Avengers, I guess, and I Feel Pretty, and it was supposed to be Duck Duck Goose, but fucking Duck Duck Goose.
Yeah, let's not go back to that.
But yeah, whatever. We can jump into it. We've got our first movie, which is Widows.
Widows. Yeah,
Widows.
What a happy, cheerful title.
Widows.
Yeah, all right. Widows.
Tell me all about Widows. I didn't see Widows. It was sort of on my list, but I just kind of went, I give up.
You give up?
I gave up on watching it.
That's okay. So Widows is a film by Steve McQueen, who you may recognize from such films as Shame, 12 Years a Slave, and Hunger.
It bothers me a little bit they didn't put Hunger and Shame together. Because of the Steve McQueen films, it feels like Hunger and Shame, they really started a pattern, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And 12 Years a Slave, what is that shit?
It's more than one word. That throws off his whole thing.
It bothers me, and it feels like Widows, it's going back to being one word, but, you know, we need widowed. We need something, we need a title that describes a state of being.
Yeah.
Hunger is physical, shame is emotional, but there's still states of being, so widowed, I think, fits. Enslaved would fit. 12 years. If they just named it Enslaved instead of 12 Years a Slave, then Boyhood could have been called 12 Years like it was supposed to be.
Was Boyhood originally supposed to be called 12 Years?
It was.
Oh.
Because it was filmed over 12 years, but then, whoops. And just imagine that you're planning this movie since 2004 or some shit. You've got the title and you think, what could possibly go wrong?
All the timing.
Are you kidding me? Well, it's not like it won Best Picture. Oh.
No. Steve McQueen, you've ruined me again.
But hey, 12 Years a Slave was a pretty rockin' movie, and I believe this is his first movie since then. So, did it live up? Was it a great movie?
I'd say it did live up. It was a heist film, and not only a heist film, but a film that went into the lives of mourning women and explored these very unique interpersonal dynamics. I mean, you see widows in movies all the time, but this made them the focus of the story, and there's something about witnessing the different processes of mourning, and then on top of that, it's not just a drama about death, it's about, like, fucking stealing a shit ton of money, which is a crazy combo.
Yeah, that's fascinating to me because I almost feel like could just be focusing on the mortars and feel unique enough, but hey, what if also robbery? I'm like, okay, I mean, sure.
Yeah.
It's like 12 Years a Slave, but what if also time travel? Like, I thought the slavery part was enough, but I mean...
Sign me up. Anyways, back to Widows. The widows, their husbands, before they died, were all together to commit one big robbery. And during the robbery, a bunch of SWAT team people shot them up and they all exploded. So, along with their explodey bodies, all the money they stole went up in flames. So, the head dude of this criminal organization tracks down the main character, Viola Davis, and he's like, hey, you want to get me that money, please? He didn't say it like that. He kind of burst into her apartment and threatened her adorable little dog by holding it by the scruff of its neck and occasionally violently shaking it. And Viola Davis tries to reach out to different connections to be like, hey, can you help me with this, like, whole criminal threatening my life thing? And she has all these resources that her husband connected to when he was alive, but the criminal dude sends his crazy brother out to start picking off her resources one by one, so she can't get outside help, and she's kind of stuck. And I'm not entirely sure why he makes her life more difficult.
Yeah, wouldn't it be easier to just let her get help so that she could get the money?
I think he was thinking if she got help from her husband's friends who betrayed him in the first place, they might re-betray him, and that was... It's still not the most thought out plan, but he kind of just corners her. So instead of all these guys with money, she has to turn to the other widows and like, hey, right now I'm getting my life threatened, but if you guys don't help me, I'm going to get all your lives threatened too.
Oh.
So she's not playing around. She's willing to drag all these women in who are trying to get out of like the criminal world and hit the reset button on their lives, but she's like, nope.
Yeah, I mean, sounds like she doesn't have a choice either.
No, she doesn't, and it's definitely understandable to see where she's coming from and the desperate place she's in, but it's still kind of harsh. And it's interesting because it also goes into some political stuff, because this guy running this criminal organization is also a politician. And you're like, oh, well, you know, corrupt politicians, we see that. What's his opponent like? And his opponent is also corrupt. But his opponent is also racist. So you've got a guy who abuses dogs and an old racist guy who only wants to help his, like, rich family and everything.
Now, here's the thing. Which one of them is the one that had money stolen and wants the money back? Dog guy. He's... This is coincidental, but he's black, and that kind of makes the other guy not like him. Okay, but... he is the criminal.
Yeah.
The dog guy. Is the racist actually a criminal?
The racist is a criminal, but his crimes are more white collar, like fraud and stuff. Like,
okay. So they're both bad.
Yeah.
So the question is, who do you vote for?
I'd go third party.
No, you gotta choose one of them. Who do you vote for?
All right, so it's between racism and just ripping off the poor and then trying to somewhat help the poor but also abusing it.
One guy is promising to disenfranchise a race of people, and the other guy is promising to blow a puppy's brains out. Which seems more promising? Is this a hard decision?
No, it's very easy. If I were a gun to my head, if I was a dog, I'd say the dog guy.
If you were a dog, you would vote for the person.
Because I'd be like, you know what? He's still gonna help people in some ways, so blow my brains out.
See, I feel like the dogs would vote for
the racist.
Yeah, because don't like the idea of blacks being disenfranchised, but we also want to survive. It'd be a very tricky situation for voting dogs.
The secret life of pets with political corruption.
Oh, man.
But, their plan, their heist, instead of, doing a plain old bank robbery, their target is the racist politician's family home. And you don't really feel bad to have them get robbed, because it's not like they're stealing from a charity or something, and they're stealing from these guys that, are happy ripping off hundreds of people.
All right, well, it sounds like a fun, intense, interesting movie.
It's a wacky romp.
Cool. Mm-hmm. Well, it's time to move on to our very next movie.
Okay.
Which, of course, is everyone's favorite movie, A Ballad of Buster Scruggs.
To be fair, it was a very good movie.
I really like this movie a lot.
Yeah.
It's an anthology. That basically means that it's 6 mini-movies in one. And how are they all connected? Basically, they all take place in the West. And that's about it. I really like the order that they were done, though, because it could have been done in any order, but I feel, and we'll go into each one and kind of explain the transition between the two and why it works. But I guess we can just kind of go back and forth, I guess. We'll each take charge of... Because essentially this is like 6 movies in one, pretty much.
Yeah, so we'll split it up and it'll be just about even.
Can I take the first one?
Go for it.
All right, so this one is also called The Ballad of Buster Scruggs, which might be a little confusing, but this is maybe my favorite one because essentially it was just really cartoony in the West. You had this character, and I'm sure it's easy to call him a Bugs Bunny kind of character, and yeah, essentially he was a very cartoony character that always had the upper hand, was always better than everyone else, but you really liked him too because he was just this really nice, friendly guy, but when people fucked with him, he brutally shot them to death.
Yeah.
But he always had a smile on his face, and it was always just fascinating to watch how good he was at murdering people.
It was very impressive.
At one point, there's this guy that's pulling a gun on him across a table, and Buster Scruggs is not armed in that moment. And I'm thinking, how the fuck will Buster Scruggs possibly get out of this one? And I did not see this coming. Buster Scruggs violently kicks the tabletop, and a plank that is making up the tabletop is loosened, rockets up to the man holding a gun. The gun is hit by the plank with such force that it is sent to the guy holding the gun's face, and then he fires the bullet into his own face. And then Buster repeats this at least 2 more times, and somehow the gun is loaded for those other 2 times, which I feel like once he's shot himself in the face, he's not pulling the trigger back so he can do it again. But you don't fucking care.
No.
Because basically, after it happens the first time, it's plausible and just kind of amazing. Like, I don't know how he knew he'd be able to do that with the table, but it fits, because this is, again, a cartoonish character, so you're willing to buy into that. But then when he does it 2 more times and it's clearly, you're thinking, that would not happen.
Yep.
You've been warmed up to not giving a shit, so you're just like, yeah, okay, I'm ready to not give a shit even more. This is great. And I could have watched that go on for a while. And there were other fun moments with him being cartoony too. Like at one point he shoots someone while turning around and looking through a mirror.
Yep.
Which was pretty cool. But I love how it ended, because basically another guy came around and challenged him to a duel, and Buster Scruggs just lost immediately. And basically the moral was sometimes there are just people that are better than you, and that's that. And Buster Scruggs just wound up becoming an angel, like a comical angel just flying through the sky, and the 2 of them sang a duet. Because this is also kind of a musical thing. It was just a story about a guy who really had it all, and it was inevitable that at some point someone better would come around. Because basically you're left thinking, like, what's Buster Scruggs going to do next? I feel like, he's done it all. And that's the beauty of it, is that as a viewer, you are almost kind of ready for him to die. Buster Scruggs, just in terms of the short film, has done everything he could. And so when he died, it sucked because he didn't want him to die, but at the same time, it kind of felt right.
Complete.
You're like, well, yeah, it makes sense. Like, we need a new character. It's like shooting Bugs Bunny in the head.
Yeah, kinda.
So I liked that one a lot.
Me too.
And it definitely made me pumped for the next one.
Mm-hmm. And I'll take the reins from here. But this one follows a outlaw played by James Franco, who goes around robbing places, and he goes into a bank where there's a nervous old man as the teller, and he's, giving all these nervous facts because he's just a strange, quirky old man.
Was he nervous at first, or was he just talkative?
You know what? I think he was just a talkative, quirky old man who just couldn't help himself but pour out his life story and, random facts to strangers.
Because I know he became nervous once he realized James Franco was pulling the gun, and then he kept talking but nervously, which is also funny.
Yeah, he couldn't just stop.
Yeah, the gun didn't actually change the negative behavior that James Franco didn't like. It just made it more nervous behavior.
Yeah, pretty much. And the thing was, though, this wasn't just any ordinary bank teller. This was a bank teller ready to fight for his establishment, because he grabbed a shotgun, I believe. Either a shotgun or a rifle. Doesn't really matter, I guess.
If I may.
Yeah.
He ducks down, and you think, because he's been so nervous and just because he was talking about his life story, you don't think that this is going to be a madman prepared for a robbery. But he has this insane thing set up where basically he had 3 shotguns just loaded and ready to go that were already mounted.
Right.
And so he just ducked down and fired all 3 extremely quickly and fucking hightailed it out the back door. And James Franco was just powerless to do anything about it. He didn't get shot, but it was amazing to have the realization, oh, fuck, this banker could fucking fight.
Yeah. At that point, James Franco's like, well, I better get the fuck out of here. He did manage to get a bag of money, but as he's running outside, he trips and the money blows away, and he hears the shotgun go off, and he's just like, fuck it, the money's not worth it, my life's more important. And so he's running away, and he hides behind a little old well, and he hears the old man running towards him, and he's got his gun ready. And when he whirls around, he sees the old man has now covered himself in makeshift armor made of kitchen appliances like pots and pans. And so James Franco sees him running towards him like a crazy person, and he starts firing, and one of the bullets ricochets off his armor, and he's like, pan shot. And Franco takes another shot, and he's like, pot shot. And by the time the old man gets up to him, he hits him with the butt of his shotgun and knocks Franco out. So
I just love how the tides turned on that.
Yeah,
in the beginning.
Really didn't expect it. It was a really fun switcheroo. And so Franco ends up getting judged guilty by a jury of his peers and is taken out into a desert plain, and they tie a noose to a tree, put it around his neck, get ready to hang him. They have him sitting on his horse, and they plan on, shooing the horse away, so he's hung that way. But before they are able to do that, a bunch of Native Americans show up and brutally kill the guys that were planning on killing him. And I guess they just left him alone because they thought it'd be funny to just leave a guy just sitting on his horse, like with a noose around his neck without like helping him. And they all scamper off.
He was basically going to be dead anyway.
Yeah,
so I
more
guess
or less.
That was fun for them.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah. And it started to get a bit uncomfortable for Franco because his horse was hungry, so it sees like a little tuft of grass a bit out of its reach, so it starts moving towards it, and he starts sliding backward on the horse, almost ready to, fall off it and then just get hung. But it's just like close enough to where the noose is tied where he wouldn't fall off. So he's just sitting there for a very long time until in the distance he sees like a herder. He manages to get the guy's attention, and the guy sets him free. But then it turns out the herder was, what was he, herding illegally?
Yeah, I guess he was taking animals that weren't his, which I loved because James Franco is basically just helping this guy out who saved his life. But then it turns out the guy he was helping, it was the first time James Franco was really doing something nice.
Yeah, exactly.
And it turns out it was kind of in vain because he's helping out this criminal, and then they capture James Franco for it because the criminal hightails it the fuck out of there before James Franco really knows what's going on.
So it falls on him.
And they find James Franco guilty of doing the hurting, even though James Franco had nothing to do with it. So James Franco is back to being hung.
Yeah, he's back at a gallows now, a lot more fancy, in front of a small Wild West town, and it's...
That's true. It was a fancier execution this time.
Yeah. More all out. And he was getting hung next to other criminals, which is interesting, because back then, they really just hung you for whatever. I mean, nowadays, you really got to do some messed up stuff to get the death penalty. But back then, you could just, slap the mayor's ass and they'll shoot you point blank in the head.
We don't like sexual harassment in this town.
It's funny because he looks next to him and one old guy's crying. He's just like, first time, like it's sex or something. And it's just and he's just totally cool about it. And he sees a woman in the crowd and they make eye contact. And it's this tender moment. And in the back of your mind, you might be thinking, oh, maybe he'll make it out of this and they'll have a nice relationship. And then mid-thought, the floor drops out from under them and it cuts to black and you hear his neck snap.
Yep, you hear 3 snaps.
Yeah.
And I just love it because basically the story boils down to James Franco did a crime and then escaped getting hung for it. But then James Franco didn't do a crime and got hung for it.
Yeah, exactly.
It was just the symmetry of that story was beautiful. And I like, because you don't know much about James Franco's character, but, he's just an everyman robber, and I liked James Franco in the role. But I love it because you don't know much about him, and then he's about to die, and just in that moment where he sees a girl, and, in his last moment, he just gets to see someone beautiful. You also get to know a little bit about him. Not only is it just a nice moment, for a dying person, but I don't think that you really necessarily hated James Franco or anything. I mean, he was a robber, but he was a likable enough person, and so, you wanted something nice to happen to him. You weren't in love with him necessarily, but he just seemed like a nice guy, and it's like, okay, well, I'm glad before you got hung, a nice thing happened to you.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it was definitely, there was some whiplash going from Buster Scruggs to this one, because this one was not as cartoony. Definitely the guy wearing pots and pans was a little out of left field,
right.
but it wasn't going insane or anything like that. You believed everything that was happening.
Mm-hmm.
So it made sense. It was transitioning into something a little more grounded.
It did still have a kind of comedic sense to it. It was just a bit darker and more, like you said, grounded.
Yeah.
But the next story...
Yeah, the next one is about... what do you call it when you don't have arms and legs?
It's not quadriplegic, because you still have arms and legs in that case. You just can't use them. I don't know if... I can't think of the technical term for it. I'd just say limbless.
Okay, sure. So basically, there's a dynamic duo. You have a limbless guy, and you have, we'll call his caretaker.
Mm-hmm.
And they have a traveling show where the caretaker dresses the guy up in a costume and makeup and everything like that. They find a spot in a town that they've traveled to. The limbless guy is put on a stool and he delivers enchanting monologues that are very powerful. And you watch as they travel from place to place, and you see that they get some audiences, and it's usually just barely enough where they can get food. And then the show ends, and you see the caretaker, played by Liam Neeson, who was cool. And the caretaker is taking care of him, and it feels really tender, honestly, because they don't talk much. They don't have conversations or anything, but Liam Neeson is taking care of this limbless guy, is helping him pee, is feeding him, putting forkfuls of food into the guy's mouth. So you can't help but kind of feel like there's a loving relationship there, because I feel like it's only natural where you see someone helping someone in need and you think that it's a loving relationship. There's a reason I'm emphasizing that so much.
Yeah.
Because at a certain point you realize that, they don't always have success. They're really kind of just scrounging to make enough money from these shows for meals, and sometimes there aren't a lot of people that come. And at a certain point, they really don't have a lot of people coming. And as they're packing up, Liam Neeson notices that a crowd has gathered elsewhere in the town. And he goes over and sees that someone has a traveling act of their own. And essentially there's a chicken, and there are a bunch of numbers that are on sticks, I guess. And this guy is encouraging people to shout out math problems. And someone goes, 11 times 2. And the chicken goes over and pecks the stick that has 22 on it.
Yeah.
So essentially, this is a chicken that can do math. And so Liam Neeson buys this chicken. And you're already starting to go, uh-oh. And there's a scene that happened earlier where Liam Neeson gets drunk, and it seemed innocuous enough because he was drunk, but it's definitely the first sign that you're like, oh, maybe he's not the best caretaker in the world. So having this happen definitely started sounding some alarms.
Yeah.
And there is a scene where this is played out so casually, and that's what makes it so dark. Liam Neeson does not seem nervous or upset or anything. It just seems like he's doing a routine thing, like if he were eating food. He just pulls over the carriage that they travel in. He gets out. He walks toward a river that's below, a fair distance below him. He looks. He grabs a rock. He throws it down. He sees that it goes pretty deep into the water. He brushes his hands off. And then the next scene, you see that the limbless guy is no longer in the back of the carriage, and instead it is just the chicken, and you know what happened. And it's great because basically you're pretty sure that you know what's going to happen. As soon as he drops the rock, oh, he's going to kill this guy. And they really did not need to show anything else because you knew it was going to happen. And the Coen brothers, who made this movie, they're smarties and just cut to the limbless guy not being there anymore, which is, I like it when they know where their audience is at and they're just able to cut the fat like that. But wow, that was dark. It's really upsetting, but what I think made it for me is that it was easy for me to be suckered into thinking that this was a loving relationship. So it really felt like a twist when you realize that Liam Neeson is just using this guy as a meal ticket, that he's only feeding this guy and helping this guy pee because he wants to be able to eat. And that's just not something you're used to seeing people get taken care of and think that it's a caring relationship.
Right.
So I loved how they just were able to play with my expectations like that. It felt brilliant and very upsetting.
Mm-hmm.
And this may be the worst transition. Not that it's a bad transition exactly, but going from the James Franco one to this one was definitely whoa. Yeah. But going from Buster Scruggs to this one would have been much worse.
Oh, absolutely.
So, yeah, James Franco acted, if anything, as a buffer between the two.
Mm-hmm.
I wonder if they had an actual limbless guy.
Yeah, that's a good question.
Because I could see the Coen brothers getting someone that actually didn't have limbs, but if it was special effects, very good special effects.
Yeah.
I imagine that's where a lot of the budget for this anthology went, honestly.
That and the period costumes, I imagine.
Yeah.
All right, so that brings us to the fourth story, which is about a prospector who goes out into the wilderness looking for gold. And this prospector is played by one of my favorite musicians, Tom Waits, who a lot of his acting roles are very quirky, and he always plays some kind of strange character, like a crazy guy who worships Dracula, for example, is one of my favorites of his. And this, I think, is one of my favorites of his as well, and I imagine you'd agree.
Is easily my favorite Tom Waits role.
Yeah.
Because it's pretty much just a guy prospecting is almost the entire thing. I mean, it's interesting enough to watch the process of prospecting because I don't really know much about how it works.
Yeah, me neither.
But it helps to have a character that you enjoy going along for this. And there's something so engaging about just Tom Waits, this old, quirky man. You know what I think it is? He's just so happy with what he's doing.
Yeah.
That helps so much because if it seems like he was just sort of going through the motions or doing his job, if he seems like, like just exhausted and upset, that'd be one thing. But he's always so optimistic about what he's doing and doing it with a smile. And it just makes you, like, it's fascinating how you're just able to be sucked into, I hope he gets some gold. And it's not even a money thing. Like, and it never feels like a money thing.
No.
I mean, it technically is when it boils down to it. Yeah. Like, he's trying to sell this gold. But it feels so natural and beautiful and wholesome. Like, it just feels like he's doing this for his soul. You know what I mean?
It's like a spirit journey.
Yeah.
But, he's looking for gold, digging into the earth, and he's looking for a pocket in the earth of gold, and he refers to it as Mr. Pocket.
It's so
like,
cute.
I'm going to get you, Mr. Pocket. You can hide all you want, but one of these days I'm going to find you.
I may be old, but you're older. I just love it. It's so wholesome.
Yeah.
And the other thing that made it feel so wholesome, too, is technically digging for gold is sort of disrupting nature.
Right.
But you can tell that Tom Waits, he doesn't want to do any more damage than he has to.
Right.
Like in the very beginning, you see this wooded area, this glen or something, and there's a deer there. And then when Tom Waits comes around, the deer kind of steps aside and Tom Waits starts his digging because that's part of the prospecting process. And yeah, he's technically interrupting nature, but, you know, it feels like he respects the nature around him.
Yeah.
Like at one point he was trying to get eggs so he had something to eat. And he was going to take all of an owl's eggs, but then the owl noticed him. And so he put most of them back, but he took one and went, oh, how high can birds count anyway? It's just like a moment like that, though, just shows that he's a very loving and caring, gentle person. Mm-hmm. And that it's to show that he's just doing enough to get by.
Yeah.
He's not being evil. And it kind of feels like nature is on his side.
More or less, yeah.
It's not like you see the deer congregate and go, he's a good soul. But like you feel that.
Right.
And I think that helps. I mean, just having that extra layer just makes you even more invested in this prospector character.
Yeah. And that investment, for me, took an awkward turn when he's in this, like, hole he dug, and he finds a pocket of gold, and I imagine he's getting ready to do a little prospector dance, but before he can, he sees a shadow come up behind him, and before he can really react, he's shot in the back. He just lies there unmoving, and I'm just like, oh, man, this is another one of those dark shorts where they just straight up kill the character off. It's just like, you're enjoying this moment, oh, bam, reality.
The reason that this was so affecting is that if this prospector thing came after the James Franco thing, it would be shocking, but I'd find myself kind of going, oh, I bet it's not a lethal shot. He's going to get up. He's going to be okay.
Yeah.
Especially because everything else up to that point had been so wholesome.
Right.
So I wouldn't be inclined to believe that it would be so dark. But it was brilliant the order they put it in, because after the Liam Neeson one and how upsetting an ending that was,
yeah,
I absolutely believed, oh, Tom Waits is fucking dead.
Yeah.
And he's there for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the way we're talking about it, it's obvious that he's not dead.
Yeah. But, yeah, he's there for a while, and this, criminal who basically was watching him do all this digging, waiting for the perfect moment to strike like some kind of asshole, is getting ready to gather the gold himself, when all of a sudden Waits comes to life, and they do a struggle, and at this point I'm like, all right, well, they didn't have him come to just so he can get shot again, so he's probably going to make it. Though that would be a very Coen Brothers thing to do, like, I'm still alive!
And I would not be surprised if that happened, but instead Tom Waits shoots the guy in the head.
Yep.
And it's wonderful. And he's like, you skunk! You were just waiting for me to find it and having me do all the work. And I just... he's a happy guy, and you don't like to see him upset, but it's good because it helps you know just how invested he was in what he was doing.
Yeah.
That he gets that upset that someone is taking it away from him.
Yeah.
It just helps to make him even more of an upbeat character.
Yeah.
And then when he goes to tend to his shot, and I think that, well, he could be dying. He could be about to die. And then he realizes that he didn't go through anything important. He's like, you didn't get anything important.
Yeah.
He's just so happy and relieved.
Yeah.
Tom Waits was so good in this.
He was great.
And he gets the gold.
Mm-hmm.
And he goes off. And I love it. Then the deer that was gone in the beginning just goes back to what he was doing.
Yep.
And on that, what was fucking brilliant, I don't know how many people noticed this, but when that skunk, we'll call him, shoots Tom Waits, you see an owl fly away.
Yeah.
And that fucking just shows you that this guy is disrupting nature.
Mm-hmm.
And not just, I mean, to put it in a broader, more metaphoric context, Tom Waits, we keep saying he's wholesome, and yeah, he is. He's a good spirit. And I think that's why nature likes him. He's not doing anything mean. And the second a character shows up and does something he shouldn't do, nature is not on his side.
Yeah.
As represented by the owl flying away. I fucking love that. And then just to prove that I'm not just making shit up, as Tom Waits leaves, there's this beautiful close-up on the owl who's back, and the owl is not making facial expressions, really. It's just an owl, but it feels like the owl is going, carry on, good man. Like,
it gives him like a nod of approval, like, good work.
Man, what a feel-good thing. And you know what? That is also... It was nice to have that after the Liam Neeson one.
It was a good palate cleanser.
Yes, it was really a perfect placement for it. And then we move right along into the fifth one of these short films, and this one started off, you just kind of had this shy girl, and she was on the Oregon Trail, and she was supposed to meet somebody where her destination was, where she would potentially marry him. But her brother, I believe it was, who was supposed to introduce her to this person that she would marry, allegedly, wound up dying on the Oregon Trail. Oh, no. And basically one of the ranchers that was riding around on a horse, who seems pretty gruff, was kind of helping her deal with it and decide whether or not she would go back. And as they were talking, I thought it was sort of a unlikely kind of bond. Not that I'd even call it a bond, but just the two of them talking, they did not seem like a match at all. But the more they talked, you definitely feel that they are really getting along. Like, I just had these assumptions with the guy on the horse that he was a gruff motherfucker and that this was a polite lady.
Right.
But it was really just me making dumbass assumptions based on how they were dressing.
Yeah, and how the Wild West kind of works.
Yeah, and shame on me. I gotta check my preconceived notions, but I shipped them, Nick.
Oh,
I don't know. They were both very shy, but very polite and very nice. And it was just really sweet and very cute, which is absurd to me. That I just was not expecting something that adorable.
In a harsh environment such as the Wild West.
Exactly, but I just loved it. And I'm almost glad I had the preconceived notions because it felt like something I wasn't expecting. I just wasn't expecting this blossoming love. And really, most of that short was just watching them gradually decide that they liked each other in their very unique, shy, and polite way, which was adorable.
Yeah.
And just, like, that was enough for me. But we gotta have a Coen Brothers twist. And basically what happens, I'll try to be quick about it, but this girl wanders off on the Oregon Trail. I keep pronouncing Oregon in two different ways, so I'll just continue to mix it up.
Oregano.
Sure. But essentially, there's this one character who didn't do much in this short. He was basically the friend of the gruff guy, we'll say. And the gruff guy was not actually gruff, as it turns out, as I've revealed, but this guy was gruff. And so when the gruff guy, who was not gruff, but I will continue to call him the gruff guy, was talking to his friend, the friend would just not respond, basically. Respond with guttural noises like... And that seems like a very hacky thing to do. It feels kind of like a caricature in a way.
Kind of, yeah.
But this actor just really sold me on it. It was weird to praise this, but the subtlety of the grunts, they had just the right nuance where I don't know. I just really believed, yes, that this is how this character is.
And I'm sure people like that existed anyway.
But this character all of a sudden realizes that this lady who has wandered off is not in a zone that she's supposed to be in. And all of a sudden, it's like something goes on in his brain. He just takes charge. And you realize this is a guy that spends most of his time going, ugh. But when shit hits the fan, he's fucking there.
Yeah.
And basically, he goes to try to rescue this lady, but there are Indians that are about to attack. And so he's going to defend the lady, but he gives the lady a gun and says, if it looks like I'm in trouble, you have to blow your brains out, because if they capture you, what they'll do is even worse. Mm-hmm. And already you're just going, oh, like, I thought this was a cute little romance, but shit just really took a turn. And it's not even the gruff guy, it's his friend.
Yeah. Which
is fine. It's just all so surprising. And the Indian fight is intense.
Very.
And the friend is definitely holding up, but at a certain point you think, oh, he's done for. He's done for. But then he winds up triumphing in the end. He got rid of all the Indians. They're either dead or they retreated. And he goes to check on the lady. She shot herself right in the head because she thought that the friend was done for.
Yeah. So
she didn't want to get captured. She did what he told her to do. And that's how it ended. Wow, what a bummer.
It was a gut punch.
It's not as much of a bummer as the limbless guy.
No.
But it's definitely... it was less expected, I guess. I mean, there was sort of a gradual transition into how dark the limbless story was going to get.
Right.
This one, it just came like a lightning bolt.
Mm-hmm. And, I don't know.
Oh, fuck.
Yeah.
And there we are. It felt like it fit because it didn't at all.
Right.
I don't know. It was just so chaotic that I accepted it.
Yeah.
And that's what I liked about it, honestly. I just liked that I thought this was going to be one story and I was really into it. And then all of a sudden, nope, it's this. I'm like, oh, okay.
Ooh. Anyways, moving on to the final part of the anthology, the sixth one. It takes place for the most part in a traveling stagecoach, and most of the camera shots are inside it, so you don't see outside too much. You don't see the exterior and what they're traveling through. It looks like in the background it's some kind of desert plain or something, but they never really established that. What matters is that they're on a journey. These 5 very unique individuals. There's a old trapper who's kind of crude and tells a number of very strange stories. There's a fancy Frenchman, I think he's French. There's an uptight old woman who clearly comes from a place of luxury. And then there's 2 mysterious men who don't really establish who they are until later on. And they appear to be, at least at first, bounty hunters.
Yeah, and they're not mysterious in the sense that they're very shady and they're not revealing very much information. One of them is quiet but seems kind and smiley, and the other one is very upbeat and extremely happy and feels just happy to be there. Like, this is a very good day.
Yeah.
And no one person in that carriage felt too similar to another one.
No.
And just honestly, most of what it was just hearing them talk with each other.
Yeah, that was a lot of the action itself. And the 2 bounty hunters, I assumed at first they were actors, because the one bigger one, played by Brendan Gleeson, started singing at one point, and the other guy was clearly telling stories in a very theatrical way, so you got the impression that they were like traveling performers. But they gradually reveal that, oh, the big guy distracts them, and the littler guy goes in for the kill, more or less.
And them isn't necessarily referring to the people that are in that carriage at the moment. No. It's just the people that they were bounty hunting. But what the story ultimately wound up being was more or less these 2 bounty hunters are bringing the other 3 passengers to the afterlife. This is all sort of a vague metaphor for that, because the destination ultimately winds up being this mansion, and then the doors ominously close as the 3 of them cautiously enter, and the 3 passengers definitely get the sense, oh, fuck, wait a minute, I think we might be dead. And this is also following this very theatrical guy that we've been talking about has been theatrical in a very inviting and kind way. And then he tells this very dark story, and while he still tells it in an inviting and kind way and with a smile on his face, there is something so disturbing about the way he tells it. He's basically just talking about how nobody wants to die, but they do die. And that's what keys in the passengers. They go, no, oh, fuck. Like, yeah. And I don't know, it felt right. It felt like, oh, okay, I guess that makes sense. They're being transported to the afterlife. And then you saw the carriage go away with their belongings. And the person I was watching it with thought that was, hey, wait a minute, why didn't they take their belongings? And they went, that's probably because, you know, they're not going to need them where they're going. Ha! And that was ultimately, like, I think it was a little confusing that this might have been about them going to the afterlife.
Yeah.
That was the definite clue. Yes, this is what is happening.
There was another thing, though. The 2 bounty hunters who may be a metaphor for the Grim Reaper or like the riverboat men on the river Styx was the fact that the thing they were transporting was a wrapped up body.
Yeah, and I guess that's where I was a little lost with this one, is that it'd be one thing if these 2 people were not bounty hunters, but I guess just, it might have been too obvious, but if they just revealed themselves to be the people that guide people into the afterlife, it definitely would have been a lot more obvious.
Yeah.
I feel like saying they're bounty hunters makes it more subtle, but when I think bounty hunters, I think that you're killing people in the real world. And I guess more or less you could say that by them taking these 3 passengers to the afterlife, they have essentially killed them. You know what I mean? Because they are making it so they are not on the earthly plane anymore.
Right.
But where I was lost is the fact that these bounty hunters had a body that they were transporting.
Exactly.
And I didn't quite get it because technically these three people who were alive and well and walking into this afterlife house, we'll call it, they were alive. So then what is that body exactly? It felt like unless that physical body just represented all three of their physical bodies and it was more just kind of a metaphor for how their bodies were being taken away.
Yeah.
I'm willing to accept that, but it was definitely just a little odd. Even if they didn't have that body, I wouldn't have asked any questions, you know what I mean?
Right.
It'd feel like they're bounty hunters, and it's these three that are the bodies being transported. Oh!
Right.
But then when there was an actual corpse, I'm like, oh wait, then why aren't they corpses? Or like, it feels like a separate thing. It feels like it's one job to guide souls into the afterlife, but it's another to reap the souls. You know what I mean?
And also, you get paid to be a bounty hunter. You don't get paid to be a Grim Reaper.
Yeah, exactly. They felt like they belonged in the real world. They didn't feel like they belonged in this alleged spiritual world. So when they were the ones leading these three people to it, it almost didn't feel like they were exactly fulfilling the roles they were supposed to. You know, part of you still felt, well, they're just bounty hunters. And so I think that's how it's probably easy for a lot of people to not necessarily pick up on the metaphor.
Right.
The whole thing, it really just, if you think about it, the very first one, the Buster Scruggs Bugs Bunny cartoon, and then ending with this really, I guess it's technically the darkest one, because there is something really dark about you're dead, you've been dead the whole time.
Yeah.
It is disturbing, but I would argue the Liam Neeson one
that's
felt
probably
the darkest.
The darkest, in my opinion.
Yeah, but it was a roller coaster, I'd say, because Buster Scruggs was a high point, and then it gets really low. It gets higher again with Tom Waits, and then it dips right back down. So you have a nice wave with this movie.
Mm-hmm. Very solid, different number of tones. Like, usually in anthologies, they all maintain a similar tone. Like in a horror anthology, they're all this similar level of scary. But this was like dramatic, funny, tragic, and it was just a lot more variety to it.
Yeah, and I liked it. It was very bold. Yeah. But it did definitely feel connected, I mean, at the very least by time period.
And the other thing that connected it is this visual thing it did where each story was part of an old book.
Yeah, that was cute.
Yeah, and every time a story ended, it would zoom out on the last words of this chapter, and it would say, like, what just happened in, like, a visual written form.
It wasn't really necessary, but it tied it together, and there's just something cute about, and now time for the next chapter. Like,
trauma.
There's something very simple and old-timey about it, but I suppose that's fitting when you get the subject matter of the West. But I liked it a lot.
Me too.
It probably helps that it was 6 different stories, because you just get a whole lot of the Coen brothers at once. It feels like 6 doses, not 1 dose.
Yeah, I'd like to see more of their, like, shorthand works. If they did another anthology, I'd be all for it.
Yeah, I'd be completely down for another anthology.
Whoa.
I think that was the sound of a fantastic beast!
Whoa, it's so majestic.
That's right, it's finally time to talk about the much-anticipated sequel that everybody's been waiting for, Fantastic Beasts, The Crimes of Grindelwald.
Grangle?
Okay, so full disclosure, Nick and I saw this movie. We had no anticipation for it.
Nope.
And I saw the first one. You did not.
Right, I did see the first one.
Oh, you did?
I did, and I thought it was fine.
Okay, yeah, I would be inclined to agree with that. But we did not care about this movie.
Nope.
But Nick and I were alone in the theater, which was nice. So the entire time that we're watching this, we don't give enough of a fuck.
Absolutely
not. And basically every chance we get, oh, here comes Grindelwald. There's Grangles over there. Like, basically, Grindelwald, which is how it was pronounced some of the time in this movie, by the way, apparently.
And other times Grindelwald, so...
Yes, but it didn't matter if he was on the screen or not. We would either be pointing out hey, there's Grendels, there's the Grindelgrom. Or we would just be waiting for, oh, is Grindelgrom on his way? Yeah. When's Grand's coming over?
And when he does show up, I'm like, hey, look, it's Dumbledore.
Yeah. And there'd be characters showing up that clearly were not Grindelwald. Hey, there's the Winglewang, there's Grandelgrooms. Like, yeah. Which is amazing. The movie is definitely more entertaining when you just point at every character and go, there's our Grandy groin. Like,
yeah, I don't know how people could sit through this otherwise.
At a certain point, you started to feel, okay, that's enough. I kept going. I'm not sure I ever stopped.
I don't know if you did. And eventually I got back into it too. I was like, you know what? Maybe I should just try to enjoy my suffering as much as I can. Try and suffer with dignity. And then, like, maybe half an hour later, I'm like, Gronkles!
Gronkles! Well, let's take a quick trip backward. Basically, I'm not a huge Harry Potter geek. But it is safe to say that this first go-around watching Fantastic Beasts, The Crimes of Grindelwald, I was a little bored out of my fucking mind. Yeah. And I also made very many distracting Gundelgron jokes, so I might have missed a few things. So I did a little bit of research just to try to make sure that I knew what was going on. And in the process, I looked up a couple other things, too, about Harry Potter, and as it turns out, Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them started off as a book in the Harry Potter world. It was something that they read for class or whatever. This is something I knew. What I did not realize is that J.K. Rowling wound up making a companion book. She made a real-life, actual book called Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them. And as you would expect, it's basically a fun little guide about fantastic beasts and, you'll never guess, where to find them.
What?
Yes. And that's fun. And what I don't remember, I know in one of the Harry Potter movies, there's this monster book. The book was literally a monster.
Oh.
And it was a really memorable scene. I think that might have been the book Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them. Let me look that up real quick, actually.
It's weird, because Newt, the main character, he wasn't writing on a sentient book, so I don't know how it would have turned into a monster.
Okay, apparently it's called Monster Book of Monsters.
That doesn't sound right.
So not quite the same book.
No.
Because I was about to say, if that book that was Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them was the monster book in that scene, literally that scene was a more entertaining incarnation of the book. Like, that was a better book adaptation than what we wound up getting. But essentially, this is a guidebook about Fantastic Beasts. Wow, cool. And when I heard that there was going to be a franchise dedicated to it, I thought, this is a really interesting thing. It almost felt too much of a diversion from Harry Potter, but at the same time I was going, okay, I feel this is a really new avenue of the Harry Potter universe we get to explore. And it seems like, obviously, the kind of story we're going to get is we're going to have some character that is an explorer, an adventurer or something, and we're just going to go on these adventures as we're seeing all these beasts and trying to find them, and we're going to go to exotic lands and just see these exotic creatures. It'll sort of feel like an Indiana Jones kind of movie in the wizarding world, and I thought, that's very interesting to me. I like the concept of that. Except that was, just in my head. Instead, I was a little bit right. There was a guy, and he was a beast keeper, I guess you could call him. His name was Newt Scamander, and Eddie Redmayne portrayed him, and he is easily the best part of both of these movies, I would say.
Absolutely.
He is delivering this really intriguing and nuanced character that's very likable, just a wonderful character wasted on these movies. But he was there. I'm thinking, okay. And there were fantastic beasts. And I'm thinking, okay. And in the first movie, basically what happened is Newt was keeping the beasts in his suitcase, but then they got released all over New York City.
Oh, no.
And so they had to track them down. And already I'm going, oh. Because, I'm thinking the where to find them part of that title is, their exotic habitat.
Yeah, their natural environment.
I wasn't thinking the answer would be New York City somewhere in like a pottery barn or something, which I'm sure was not what the original book was saying. It's like, you can find all these fantastic beasts in New York City if some fuck accidentally lets a suitcase loose. So like, that was disappointing in and of itself. And yet, the beasts themselves were, I suppose, technically fantastic, but I was not that amazed by them.
No.
And just, I don't know, those scenes were probably the best. But again, it was disappointing.
It was interesting, though, seeing the American side of the wizarding world, because for the entire Harry Potter series, all we see is Britain, which is fine and dandy, but I always wanted to see what the rest of the world was like. And we got it in this to an extent, but, you know, they didn't really focus on that side of it that much.
No, not really. I agree, though. There was something interesting about that. The problem goes beyond these things, though. Is that not only was it a little underwhelming that they're just looking for beasts in New York City, but that wasn't actually even really what this was about. Ultimately, Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them was about a troubled boy that had secret wizard powers and became evil and was going to destroy all of New York City unless he was stopped by a whole bunch of wizards.
Yep.
That was the main premise. And I'm thinking, what's that got to do with Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them? And the answer is nothing.
Yeah.
Basically, Newt is just accidentally roped into this while he's trying to find his Fantastic Beasts. Hey, ultimately, Grindelwald is in this one, and there's a very disappointing scene where, what's his name?
Colin Farrell?
Yeah, Colin Farrell winds up being Johnny Depp the whole time, and you just feel the downgrade.
Yeah.
Oh, man.
It's just like, wow, that's a fantastic actor, and where to find them.
Yeah.
And now it's just like, oh, it's Johnny Depp.
Yep. But essentially, he wanted to pin the attack on New York City on Newt Scamander. That wasn't his plan the entire time, though. Basically, Newt Scamander just sort of showed up, except Grindelwald, I guess that's what I'm calling him now,
Yep.
didn't even intend for the attack that happened to happen. It was an accident. So I don't fucking actually get it. But
yeah,
basically, I suppose the point I'm making is that Newt was never really supposed to be a part of this story. Newt is the Fantastic Beasts connection. So, more or less, what I'm saying is the Fantastic Beasts were not supposed to be a part of the Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them story. Listen, if you're going to have a story about some kid that winds up going cuckoo and attacking New York City, just make it about that. You don't need Fantastic Beasts at all.
And you can title it, The Flash, who's the actor, has a mental breakdown and blows things up.
Sure.
Yep.
Or, uh-oh, now it's Johnny Depp. I don't know. Just something. But Fantastic Beasts were not really relevant in the first movie. Now, there's a reason that I'm bringing all of this up. Clearly, this was already a problem. It becomes even more apparent that it's a problem when you have the title of the second movie, which is Fantastic Beasts: The Crimes of Grindelwald.
Yeah.
And I'm sitting here thinking, I haven't even seen the movie yet, and I have no idea how these things are connected. Like, the first title wasn't even connected to the whole movie, but now, Fantastic Beasts: The Crimes of Grindelwald. What? Like,
Yeah.
how? It's basically, I'm reading that as Fantastic Beasts Presents. I'm like, how? What? The Crimes of Grindelwald are a smaller part of a story revolving around the Fantastic Beasts, is what this title is alluding to. Except in this movie, there are even less Fantastic Beasts.
Oof.
Because you don't even really have a side story of, a suitcase exploded and the animals got loose. There are a couple beasts, but they just show up for a little bit, and they're not important even remotely.
No, I think he only captures one of them. The other ones he just casually interacts with.
Yeah, they are truly less important than ever before. They weren't even important in the first movie,
No.
but I mean, you gotta hand it to J.K. Rowling. It's impressive how unimportant she had yet to make the Fantastic Beasts. Like, she really went the distance to just make you question, why are you adapting this book if you're doing nothing with the book?
Yeah, she's like, oh, you think the title's irrelevant then? Just wait and see.
It's like adapting Green Eggs and Ham, and it's like a fucking Vietnam War movie. And in one scene, there's a soldier eating eggs. I'm like, was that it? Like, those the eggs? They weren't even green. What the fuck is this? Like, that's what it feels like.
Pretty much.
What the fuck is going on? So that's not even scratching the surface, because I'm talking about what the movie isn't and not what the movie is. But that alone bothers me so much. Why is this about Fantastic Beasts? And it's so heartbreaking too, because Newt Scamander, again, wonderful character, tied to the Fantastic Beasts inextricably. And he just has nothing to do here. Nothing to do at all.
Yeah.
But, okay, I guess we could focus on the Crimes of Grindelwald, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, we got that at least. What crimes does Grindelwald do? He does 2. He does approximately 2 crimes.
And he's kind of pushing the crazy kid to do worse acts, so he's enabling another crime indirectly.
Yeah, oh, by the way, this is also another story about the crazy kid.
Yep.
Whose name is Credence.
So we didn't get enough of him the first time. Get ready to have him some more.
Yeah, we got Creed 2, if you know what I'm saying. Oh, man, actually, like, why not? They should just call it Creed and then Creed 2. Just, like, who cares? Whatever.
It's just as irrelevant as Fantastic Beasts.
Oh, I want Creed 3 to be Creed from the Rocky Creed beating the shit out of Creed from the Fantastic Beasts.
And Grindelwald.
Grindelwald could just die alone.
Okay, that's fair.
I care so little about... Well, to be fair, I care basically about no one in the Fantastic Beasts movies. Except Newt. I shouldn't, but I do.
You can't help yourself.
But yeah, it's another movie about this kid that just I don't give a fuck about. And it's once again, Grindelwald is just, hello, I'm here to get involved with this kid, I guess.
Yep.
But let's just talk about the 2 crimes Grindelwald does, because they're both terrible.
Okay.
The first one is the big jailbreak.
Ooh.
Now, I'm just going to tell you what happens in detail here. Grindelwald has someone on the inside that's going to help him. Grindelwald is in jail, and this person that's on the inside, without any of the guards noticing, winds up casting a spell where this inside person now looks like Grindelwald, and Grindelwald now looks like the inside person. So they switched appearances. So then Grindelwald is about to be transferred to court, where he's about to have his hearing. And the wizards, I read this, and I feel like it's wrong, but I read it from multiple sources. They cut out the tongue of Grindelwald. Because their reason was Grindelwald's most evil thing is he can persuade people, so we'll cut out his tongue. And I'm thinking, that's very barbaric. Did you not have magic? And it'd be one thing if they're like, yeah, we're about to bring him to your execution, so who gives a fuck? But if they're bringing him to a trial, what's the point of the trial? Yeah, you're not going to say anything. If he can't defend himself, just fucking keep him in jail.
Or kill him.
Just cut out his tongue and that's it. It'd make more sense if we're going to transfer you to another prison. Let's not even talk about the fact they're transferring this horrible criminal in a flying carriage instead of all the other magical ways I know that they have to transport. But whatever. So again, we know, because I've explained it to you, that This isn't really Grindelwald. It's the assistant. So you should be thinking, okay, so now Grindelwald is able to make his getaway. Perfect. It's going to be a while before anyone finds out that this Grindelwald is an imposter, and it'll give the real Grindelwald plenty of time to start doing his evil plans. But then Grindelwald, having the appearance of this inside person, decides to break out the fake Grindelwald out of jail in this big old fucking heist scene. where he's just taking over the carriage with magic and killing people, and eventually he succeeds. And he has the inside guy, and they've switched back to looking the way they're supposed to look. And you never see the inside guy again, from what I know. So I'm wondering, what was the point of Grindelwald rescuing this guy? Because honestly, Grindelwald's supposed to be an evil guy that's doing crimes, but this crime was essentially rescuing an innocent person. So it was, yes, technically crime, and people died. There was something inherently heroic about it. Like, he did not have to rescue this guy. But it basically seems like he only did it out of the goodness of his heart. Like, why would he rescue this guy?
I think, though, the guy is probably also guilty of other crimes, and because he's in Grindelwald's evil group. So the evil group has probably done a number of nasty
well, this
things.
was an inside guy. This was a guy that was working for the good guys.
Oh.
So if he was guilty of crimes, no one knew about them yet.
No.
And plus, he was disguised as Grindelwald, so, Grindelwald easily could have just let fake Grindelwald remain fake Grindelwald, and that's it.
That's
and who
true.
cares?
Yeah.
It would have been the smarter thing to do if Grindelwald was, a good villain.
Right? Yeah.
But no.
No.
And there's crime number one. We did it.
And also, what just came to me was, why didn't he just stay disguised as the other guy? Because people are going to be looking for him. And he's just like, you know what? I love my face so much, I can't spend another moment as someone else.
I don't fucking get it. But whatever.
Yeah,
yes.
Anyway.
He could have just become Colin Farrell again.
Yeah,
no, I guess that disguise is already... what's another exceptional actor that he...
He could have become Jack Nicholson.
Yeah, sure. Okay. Oh, man. Weird. But yes. So here's his other crime, and this crime hurts the most. Because Grindelwald is mostly spending the movie trying to track down Creed. Because Creed is powerful. It's like, I want to have this boy turn to my side. And I'm like, I don't care! So that's all boring. But then there's basically a big rally that Grindelwald is deciding to hold for people that want to hear him. And cops are showing up, but they can't arrest anyone. They're just kind of listening to what Grindelwald has to say. And Grindelwald winds up making what turns out to be a very compelling speech. And I remember turning to you, and because I had spent, the first hour and 15 minutes of this movie just being utterly perplexed and bored out of my mind.
And just making Grindelgrob jokes, and then it was all of a sudden interesting.
Yeah, it was I was shocked. I just turned to him and went, are you also vaguely compelled at what's going on?
And I was like, yeah. It's very strange.
And so we're just seeing this play out, and essentially he's giving this speech. And hey, it's just really, say what you will about Johnny Depp, I felt that it was very well performed.
Yeah.
And he's doing it in a very convincing way, where essentially he's making this case for why we should kill humans. And just putting it that way sounds absurd. Like, how could that possibly be convincing? And that's why it was so compelling. Because he was just using these classic manipulation techniques, or maybe he wasn't even intending to manipulate. Maybe this was just the way he was speaking and it happened to come off as convincing, but he just seemed very reasonable, level-headed. He was explaining how he didn't hate humans, he just felt that they were different from magic people. But essentially his main argument, which is where it got the most compelling, is he was showing how humans are capable of horrible war. Now, this was a little odd, the way that this was presented, because essentially one of his followers handed him a magic skull, and then he inhaled and vaped out a vision of the future that showed what was probably the Holocaust.
Yeah, or World War II.
Yes. So, basically, Grindelwald was now saying, I would like to stop the Holocaust. Which, again, this is supposed to be the bad guy? You know what I mean?
But also, he's saying he wants to stop the Holocaust by causing another Holocaust.
Yeah, essentially.
So
it is a little weird.
Yeah.
But it's interesting because he's basically saying humans are capable of horrible things, so we should kill the humans so they don't kill us.
Right.
And I'm thinking, sounds good to me. Like, I get it.
Yeah.
I get where you're coming from. But also, this movie's called The Crimes of Grindelwald. So, you're thinking, well, this is a bad guy. I'm not supposed to be convinced by him. But I thought that was an interesting turn. And I thought maybe there is hope for this hopeless franchise because they're doing something interesting with this villain. If they can get the audience to side with this villain, that is so interesting.
It would be.
Then after the speech, he immediately just violently kills cops for fun. And I'm like, oh, well, like...
we're back to where we were at the beginning.
Yeah, like, all you had to do is just make him kill the cops in self-defense and not enjoy it and maybe even plead, like, no, please, I don't want to do this. But clearly he was having fun. He was making these rules and saying, you're not playing by the rules. And he'd kill one. And I'm like,
yeah.
He just went from being surprisingly... oh, maybe I want to be with this guy and be on his side too. Oh, no, he's just some shithead. So what the fuck? It's just utterly pointless. And that is what I would categorize as his second crime. He killed a bunch of cops.
Yeah.
And that was the most heartbreaking because it came after such potential in that scene. And then that...
yeah.
And that, basically, it's still mostly not about Grindelgrams.
Not really.
Because, yeah, he's in it a lot more than he was last time. Well, debatably just as much. Debatably less, actually.
Yeah.
But it's still mostly about this kid. And this kid, you thought he died in the first movie, but then in this movie, he's going, hello, I'm in the circus now. But I should break out. And so he breaks out of the circus.
Uh-huh.
And then he's like, I want to find my parents. And so that's happening. And then all these other characters are in the movie.
Yeah.
You have Newt Scamander. You have his brother. He has a brother now.
Oh, whoa.
You have the love interest from the first movie. You have the friend from the first movie and the girl that likes the friend from the first movie. They're all in it, and they're all just kind of going around just vaguely trying to look for this boy.
Yep.
Oh, you also have Dumbledore.
Ooh.
And he's also like, hey, go look for the boy. So just everyone's looking for the boy, and it's so fucking boring. I do not know why Newt had a brother, because the brother was just like, hey, you should go look for the boy. Hey, can I also point out that Newt did almost as many crimes as Grindelwald in this movie? Because basically they told Newt, after the first movie, you can't travel internationally, okay? But then Newt traveled internationally because this movie, just to prove it could be more boring than the first movie. Remember how you said the first movie was compelling because it was in America?
Yeah.
Well, now there's just, hey, let's go back to Britain.
It's just like, oh, all right, well.
And so he traveled internationally, which was a crime, but no one ever brought it up.
Right.
But as far as I'm concerned, he's getting close to being on the level of Grindelwald.
The Crimes of Newt. To be fair, there is a big difference between traveling illegally and murdering people.
I guess that's true. But yeah, they're all just basically doing fucking nothing, and it's boring the fuck out of me as this Creed guy's like, I want to find my mommy. And can I just say one thing that really, really pissed me off?
What?
The friend character. We'll call him the comic relief.
The fat guy.
Yes. In this movie, whatever, he probably told jokes that no one cared about. He's a fine actor in other things.
He is.
But what I hated about the first movie is you don't really care about this character because he's mostly not important.
Right.
But then at the end of the first movie, basically a bunch of non-magical people got exposed to magic, so they had to cast this spell that would make everyone in New York City that was non-magical forget that they ever saw magic. And that meant that this comic relief, who was a non-magical person, would have to forget all the magical adventures he had. And I'm thinking, okay, sure. Because he just felt like a disposable character to me, and who cares? But they made such a big deal out of it. I'm thinking, what the fuck? Why do you think that I care about this? And the music's swelling, and they really hold on just the moment where this comic relief suddenly forgets, and it's supposed to be so heartbreaking And I'm thinking, I don't care. Like, listen, if you were going to make this such a big moment, have him be the main character. Then it might be a little emotional. Not that you even cared about the main character that much. You only cared about New by the virtue of the nuanced performance.
Yeah.
And that was it. That was fucking it. So I'm pissed off about that moment in the first movie.
And also, the comic relief character would probably have been a lot more likable, and you'd probably feel sad that he was going if he was actually funny.
Yes, that would also help.
If J.K. Rowling understood how humor worked, because I feel like her movies overall, like her stories, lack humor. They take themselves very seriously.
Yeah, I imagine the first Harry Potter movies definitely had some funny moments. And the books, too. I recall there being funny moments in the books.
I mean, playful, yeah, but I don't know. Just a very serious tone, I feel like, overall.
Yeah. But, okay, comic relief shows up in this movie. And he's got his memories of magic back.
Whoops.
And I'm thinking, what? And basically they wave it away with this line saying, oh, no, that spell in the first movie that got rid of bad memories of magic, but I still have good memories of magic, which, A, the first movie absolutely made it clear he had no memories of magic regardless of if they were good or bad.
Yeah.
Made it completely clear. There was no turning back from that. But B, if you were just going to go ahead and say, swoop-de-doo, I still have my memories, why did you waste my fucking time in the first movie with this stupid-ass emotional 10-minute scene of comic relief losing his memories only to just have him have them back? Now it's doubly meaningless. What the fuck was the point of that? That just bothers me so much.
Understandable.
And he didn't even need to be in this movie, because so many of the characters didn't need to be in this movie. They're just basically doing nothing. They're just there. They're just there. It is including Dumbledore. He really doesn't do much. The only thing that happens with Dumbledore is that he apparently had a friendship with Grindelgrams
or
at some
something
point.
more.
Yes, it's vaguely implied. It might have been gay, but we don't have the confidence to say that.
And it's weird because there's a weird World War II metaphor going on, and Grindelgrab alludes to it, but it's implied that Grindelgrab is talking about, like, magic people as if they're the Germans, and muggles or non-magical people or whatever as if they're the Jews, and he wants to do a kind of Nazi thing. And so that kind of pairs Dumbledore against him, and so it's like a Churchill-Hitler kind of vibe, and it's like, oh, Churchill and Hitler were gay for each other?
Yeah, I could see how that'd be a little bit weird. But what really bothered me about that is that apparently they had a friendship, and so they decided, we love each other so much that we're going to cast a spell that makes it so we cannot possibly harm each other. Which is a weird thing that you decide to do with your best friend. Just in case we want to kill each other one day, let's cast this spell. But whatever, so I guess the spell goes into a magic rock or something. So basically the point of this is so Dumbledore cannot fight Gringgrings. Because basically all the important government wizard people are going, hey, Dumbledore, you gotta fight Grindelgrooms. But he's going, I can't. And you know what would be compelling? If he went, I can't because of my internal conflict, because he used to be my best friend and it would break my heart.
Right.
But instead he's going, I can't because there's a magic rock that's saying no. Like, what a spectacular thing to fuck up. It was right there.
Yep.
You didn't even have to do anything. You already had the drama and you went, hold on, magic rock. I'm like, are you fucking kidding me? Let's finally get to what everyone's been waiting for in this movie that's supposed to be about fantastic beasts and Grindelgrams. We're going to talk about Creed.
Oh, I thought it was going to be beasts.
No. So, Creed. He's in a circus now.
Oh, boy.
Why? I don't know.
He also has a snake friend.
Yes, that's apparently a character that is a snake in the Harry Potter movies.
Is that the giant snake?
Yeah, there's a giant snake, and now we know it was once a human.
That kind of makes it really sad.
it kind of makes it really entirely unimportant because the snake also does nothing.
That's a good point.
Fun. So Creed decides, I want to leave the circus and I want to figure out who my mommy is. So he goes off and then he finds this elf lady and goes, are you my mommy? And she goes, no, but I put you up for adoption and I'm very nice. And then an assassin comes and kills this elf. And Creed knew that wasn't his mommy, but Creed got really mad anyway and turned into a giant explosion of wood particles. But then the assassin put up a force field so the wood particles couldn't hurt him, and then the assassin disappeared. And the snake, went into the wall but came out. And then I guess Creed decided to not be an angry storm cloud anymore.
He went back to boy form.
Yes. And the assassin was actually working for the good government, but was actually working for Granglegroms because Grumbles wanted the boy Creed to be upset so that Creed would want to come to Grindelwald himself.
And do more explodey things.
Yes, basically. So, what a fine arc that assassin had. But there's a whole other arc, too.
Whoa.
Because then Creed is at this place or something, and all the characters that are looking for him just kind of show up and, oh, hey, isn't it funny that we're all here? This is great. Hey, look, there's Creed, the special boy. All right, Creed, how you doing? And then, this other character that's been going around saying, I want to kill Creed, and I'm not going to say why. Tee-hee-hee. He shows up, and he goes, hey, Creed, guess what? I'm going to explain why I want to kill you, and goes into a very long flashback story about how, hey, guess what, Creed? Your dad was mean to my mom, so I swore that I'd kill you. Do you see how I conveyed that in about 5 seconds?
Yeah, it was pretty straightforward.
So picture each second having a minute of screen time. But then there's this other character whose last name is Lestrange, so I guess she's related to that other character that's Lestrange from Harry Potter.
Bellatrix, yeah.
And she goes, hey, wait. Also, her character was basically pointless, too.
Mm-hmm.
But she did say this important thing. She goes, wait, actually, I have a twist to reveal to you, other assassin. So here comes another big flashback.
Oh, boy.
Basically, she was an orphan, and there was a baby that was also an orphan, and they were being sent away on a ship. But she, when she was a little orphan kid, got really bothered by this baby crying. And I'm going to give you multiple choice, Nick. You're a child, and a baby's crying. What do you do if you're a child? A, do you yell at the baby and go, hey, just stop, baby? Because, you're a kid and you're frustrated. B, do you just go complain to your caretaker and go, the baby won't stop crying. Make the baby stop crying. Which, seems like something you would do, be overly dependent on a parent to fix a problem that can't be remedied.
Right.
Or C, would you take the baby and find another baby and switch the babies?
I'd have to say B.
Oh, I'm sorry. That's not the right answer.
What? This game's rigged.
Yes, see, baby swapping is what I imagine all kids would do.
Oh,
and so she goes, time to swap these babies, and she finds one wearing... I assume she shopped around until she found a baby wearing the same pajamas that looked the same, and she took that baby. But then the ship sank, and she survived with the baby she had, but the other baby did not survive.
Oh, man.
And the big twist was Lestrange went, so that baby that drowned, you think that Creed is the son of the father that made your mom upset, but actually the son of the father was that baby that drowned, so you don't actually have to kill anyone, okay? And we'll say that was like a 20-minute explanation.
Yeah.
Or at least it felt like it. And I don't even think this includes that Lestrange had her own flashback about, this is what... that might have been part of this. There might have been a really long flashback of showing Lestrange as a kid in the moments leading up to her being an orphan.
It was a fucking blur. I think I remember her being a little kid, but there was so much stupid shit and so many random flashbacks that I couldn't piece them together. Mostly because we were shitting on it, but I feel like even if I was paying attention, I'd still be lost.
Oh yeah, I mean, I gotta just admit that if I had not looked up all this stuff, I would just be utterly lost right now.
Yeah.
That scene I described with the first assassin who just had a force field and killed an elf, I had no fucking idea what was happening.
Me neither.
I'm just watching this person turn into splinters and just throw himself into a red bubble as the guy inside the bubble is smiling and then disappears. And I'm like, what did I watch? Why is this snake lady here? Did she gonna do anything? What the fuck's going on?
Yeah.
Who is this elf? I'm not sure I'm happier that I have an explanation.
It might make it worse.
I can say, though, now the second assassin, you thought he might have been important, but now that he realizes the person he wanted to kill is dead, he can join the ranks of all the other characters that aren't important. Hooray! Another unimportant character. I was worried he might have significance.
Oh, man. Close one.
Yeah. Then Creed winds up going to Grimbles and goes, Oh, Mr. Grubgrobble, I'm so sad. Tell me about my mommy. And Grambles is like, you've come to the right Gribblebble.
The Grababble.
Sit on Uncle Gribobble's lap, and Grim Groob will tell you the big twist of the whole movie. Are you ready for this?
Ooh.
It turns out that the baby that was swapped, if I didn't make that obvious, that was Creed.
Yep.
The swapped baby. But where is that baby swapped from? Oh no, it was swapped from the Dumbledore family, and this is the long-lost brother of Dumbledore. Creed is a Dumbledore. Oh, man! Oh,
wow.
What intrigue.
Wow.
And here comes the credits. We're just going to leave on that cliffhanger. I hope you're really excited for the third movie. Hooray!
The Crimes of Creed.
I'm sure it'll be something even more painfully irrelevant.
Yep.
Like, it will. There's no way it will actually be about Creed.
No.
Like, fantastic beasts journey to the ocean, and there will be no water at all in the entire movie. Like not even characters drinking out of a glass. It will be the driest fucking possible movie, and it will be called, like, Fantastic Beasts. It's very wet, and it will be just a desert.
Fantastic Beast. It's in Antarctica, and it's in the Congo.
But hey, you know what, Harry Potter fans, who I imagine are the only audience for this movie, I got a special announcement for you. They go to Hogwarts.
Whoa!
And they play the classic music too. And it's really embarrassing. It feels like an actor that's really prolific and has done a lot of amazing work. Okay, here's what it feels like. You know the movie 43?
Yeah.
Where they roped in a lot of, like, actually talented people into being in a bunch of bullshit?
Yep.
That is the exact same feeling of seeing Hogwarts in this movie. I'm not even that big a Harry Potter fan, but I just felt the same secondhand shame and embarrassment of, what are you doing? Oh, honey, no, get out of this movie. What are you doing?
Come on.
It was awful, and they didn't even have a good reason for going to Hogwarts. They basically went there and went, hey, Dumbledore, can you help? Nope. I explained that in another scene, but I'll say it again. Hope you enjoyed being in Hogwarts. Goodbye.
Get out.
Yeah. Ooh. Yeah. Not a good movie.
Absolutely not.
I think it benefited from not paying attention. I would. The way to watch this movie is point at everything and go, hey, it's Grabba Gribes. Like, it will be a better movie
for
that way.
2 hours and 20 minutes. Just do that.
Is that how... It was a long... It was
at least
long.
2 hours and 10 minutes.
Oh.
That's why it really dragged for me around that, like, hour and a half mark. When I started trying to pay attention, I'm like, you know what? I'm willing to give this a chance. Oh, nope, I give up.
I think that just made me pass a kidney stone. How painful it was to remember the length of this movie.
And the fact that J.K. Rowling, who is such a renowned author, penned the screenplay for this is very baffling. But she's more meant for books than screenplays, clearly.
What's stupefying is that in the first movie, I mean, I already explained the comic relief thing. How in the first movie there was that moment of, oh no, I forgot everything, and then the second movie, never mind. And it would make sense if the second movie was written by someone else entirely.
Yeah.
But it was written by her. So it's like she just changed her mind when she moved on to the second movie, and that's not exactly a vote of confidence that she's great at screenwriting.
No.
And someone could point, well, that you shouldn't judge her on that alone, and I would refer you to the rest of this conversation we just had. So, yeah, I'm actually genuinely a little excited to see what happens with the third one, because I just want to see how irrelevant it can possibly get and how inept it can get. I think people might have expected this to be great in the beginning and were hoping it'd get even better. But now I'm hoping it has the potential to get really bad.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I think that with a little magic, it can get there. But for now, I think with the little magic, we can get the fuck out of here, because we've been talking about movies for too long. Let's stop.
All right, I'm good with that.
Cool, and we'll be back for another wonderful part of November movies.
Oh, they go on forever.
They never end.
Ugh.
But you know what else never ends? The love and support that you can get from Fisher Mist Media if you just get your keister to Fisher Mist Media. It's conveniently located, I assume, and you'll be able to get anything you want done as long as it's related to audio, specifically if it's related to movies. Not to say that other audio things couldn't be taken care of, because they definitely can be, but movies, audios in your movies, that is how it's done.
Yes.
Over at Fisher Mist Media. So book your visit to Fisher Mist Media, Hollywood.
Do it up.
And we're going to book our visit to getting the fuck out of here. Goodbye.
Bye.